So, what we're going to discuss today is the Korban Pesach. What happens if Mashiach comes today? So then we have enough time to prepare Korban Pesach, because one of the halachas regarding a Korban Pesach, according to most Rishonim, is that you have to have it 4 days in advance in order to inspect it from any blemish, to be able to be makriv the korban, to be a tomim, whole, complete, without any blemish.
Any tamid like that.
Huh?
Any tamid is like that.
Any carbon, or carbon tamid, correct. Right, carbon tamid as well. So the question is, what happens if Mashiach comes after Yud Nisan and you don't have 4 days to inspect it for a blemish? Can you still bring the Korban Pesach, or will we not be able to bring the carbon? You don't have the 4 days, so you have to wait and bring a Pesach Sheni. That's the shaila. So basically, in other words, the question really is whether this halacha that you're supposed to inspect the carbon for 4 days, is it ma'akiv or is it not ma'akiv? Is it li'kuva or not? Is it just l'chatchila? Or if you don't have the 4 days, you just take the animal, you inspect it right then and there, and if it looks to be healthy, you could rely on a chazakah that it's an animal without any mum.
Why Pesach Sheni? Pesach Sheni is only following the Chayka, or
No, lav dafka, no. No.
Anyways?
Yeah. If you can't be makriv Pesach Rishon, then you makriv Pesach Sheni. Yeah.
The only time is if it's on purpose, if it's amazing.
Yeah. There's a whole discussion regarding Pesach Sheni. There's a letter from the Rebbe about that. We once spoke about it, but we're not going to discuss now. If you're not being makriv the Pesach Rishon, then you can be makriv the Pesach Sheni. The question is, maybe you can do it even without inspecting it for 4 days. So the story is as follows. B'chlal, this whole idea that a carbon has to be inspected 4 days for a mum comes from the Gemara in Psachim and Tzadik Vav, where the Gemara says that not only the carbon of Mitzrayim, when they were told that they have to buy it 4 days in advance, the Yikchudesh, they should buy the carbon 4 days before and inspect it for 4 days, but also by other carbonas, by the carbon Tamid, and Rashi there clearly says that by the carbon Pesach as well, it has to be inspected for 4 days. Okay, the only difference between the carbon Pesach by Mitzrayim and the carbon Pesach today is that then the halacha was that you had to buy it 4 days before. Moshe Rabbeinu said, "V'yikchu lahem Israel beis avis," and that they should take it 4 days before, they should acquire it 4 days before. Today, in Pesach Deiris, that is, the carbon Pesach and our future generations, you don't have to acquire it 4 days in advance, even if it's not yours. You can inspect it before you buy it, whatever. There's no din of that you have to buy it 4 days in advance. Right? But you still have to inspect it, according to that Rashi. But, according to Rashi, this din to inspect it is not ma'akiv. It's not ma'akiv the carbon. Even if you did not inspect it, you can still use it as a carbon. What's the raya that's what Rashi holds? So the Oyer Zerua, which is one of the Rishonim as well, brings another Rashi, also in Psachim, on the Ayin Aleph, where Rashi there explains the Gemara. The Gemara says, what happens if a person shechted the carbon Pesach on Erev Pesach, Shechali is b'Shabbos. So he shechted it on Shabbos. It's Deiche Shabbos, but he shechted it on Shabbos, but then he found it to be a balmum that has a blemish. So the Gemara says, Yechayev achatos. Chayev achatos. So Rashi says, why Yechayev achatos? Is oinus. He shechted the carbon, he thought it's a tomim, and it turns out to be a balmum. That's called an oinus, not a shaygig. So Rashi explains that the reason why he's a shaygig is because he should have inspected it before to make sure that it doesn't have a mum. Should have inspected it.
Inspect from the outside and know that it's not going to be treif.
Huh? Yeah, yeah. Well, a treif is a different story, but over here we're talking about a mum.
Oh,
A mum.
sorry.
Right? Yeah, so that's what it says in the Gemara. So Rashi explains that because the reason why he's a shaygig is because he should have inspected the carbon. So what's mashma from this Rashi? So you see from this Rashi, if there was no mum and you shechted it, then it's fine, even though you did not inspect it. We're talking about a person that did not inspect it. If you find a mum, then the carbon is puzzle and you chayav achatos. But if you did not inspect it and the carbon did not have a mum, it's mashma that it's fine. Otherwise, the Gemara should have said, anybody that shechts a carbon Pesach on Shabbos without inspecting it in advance is chayav achatos. So yeah mum, no mum, because you didn't inspect it. So the carbon that you shechted is not kosher. Huh?
Doesn't tell us what
Say that we're talking about the Yavid. What?
We're asking the Shiloh about
we're asking the Shaila b'diavad. What happens if Mashiach comes within 4 days? Within 4 days of Pesach. Yes. Yeah. That's the Shaila. So the Chatchila.
This guy, with the Evid, he's saying, we're saying that it would be.
But l'chayda, this is also considered to be a matzav of b'diavad. You can't be makar of a korban Pesach in any other way.
There's different types of b'diavad.
Here, and I say that, okay. But l'chayda, just like someone that's already shechted it, you say that it's
not ma'akiv, you're saying that
yeah.
l'chayda,
If it's
it's
not
a very
ma'akiv,
important
so
mitzvah.
then yeah.
But you're down the sin, and this is your way of doing it.
Yeah.
This is your-
So you still have to inspect it from a mum,
You need
right?
4 days for this.
But you don't need 4 days.
And Rashi would maybe be saying that this person didn't inspect it at all, or who says how many days he didn't inspect it for. If he inspected it one time, it could be it's already. Rashi's
Not a shaygig. He's not a shaygig anymore, right? Could be. Okay. Then there's a Taisvis and Sukkah. The Taisvis and Sukkah says the opposite. Taisvis there says that if a person shechted a korban tamid, he's talking about a tamid. Rashi was talking about a korban Pesach. Taisvis is talking about a korban tamid. You shecht a korban tamid that you did not check for a mum 4 days in Shabbos, you chayav v'chatas. And Taisus clearly spells out, it doesn't make a difference if you found a mum, you did not find a mum, because that's one of the conditions of the korban, that's ma'akev, that you have to check it for a mum 4 days. That's l'chayda the pshat and Taisus. That's the simple pshat and Taisus. Taisus clearly says 4 days. Taisus doesn't say. Taisus says 4 days. But the Teres Chesed says, Teres Chesed, which was Chesed of the Tzemach Tzedek. So the Teres Chesed has a tshuva on this inyan. And he holds ba'arichis, he has a whole arichis, he holds that this whole inyan of checking it for a mum for 4 days is not ma'akiv. And he brings this taisvis, and he says, even this taisvis does not mean that you have to inspect it for 4 days. You have to inspect it, but not necessarily 4 days. Taisvis Befedish mentions 4 days. He says, Taisvis is saying the shear of 4 days because alibu de emes l'chatchila, you should inspect it 4 days. But Taisus didn't mean benigay to the korban chatas, if you shechted it on Shabbos, that you'd be chayv korban chatas if you found it to be of tomim, and you inspected it even not 4 days. Taisus is not talking dafka about 4 days. That's his shitta. But the pashtup pshat and Taisus, just reading the words of Taisvis, it is mashma that this inyan to inspect the korban 4 days is ma'akiv. That's the Taisvis. The Ohr Zarua himself, a whole shakel v'tarya, back and forth, it is ma'akiv, it's not ma'akiv. He brings an interesting Gemara, where the Gemara says the story benegay to when there was a fight, Malchach Hashmonai, and Hyrcanus and his people were inside Yerushalayim, and Aristobulus was outside. So the Gemara says that every day they would take money and put it into a kupa, into a box, and they would throw it over the wall. They would be mishalshal the box outside the wall, and in return they would get they would give them a behema for the korban tamid every single day, because there was a siege around the city. They couldn't get any korbanos. So they would give them money every day, and they would get in return every single day a korban tamid. So he says from this Gemara, it's mashma that they got the behema for the korban tamid every day. For that day. It said the lashon the Gemara there is b'chol yom v'yom. That's the lashon the Gemara says. Yeah, right.
But
So
it's not
Pashut Pshat.
right. The pashtup pshat is b'chol yom v'yom, which means that they got it for that day.
The last part of the story is when the Chazer up.
Right.
Then that day was a destruction.
Right.
That day they brought the korban tamid. If you're going to say that it's
If they had it in advance. So right. So it's pretty clear l'chayda, that they had it for that day. So which means that it's not ma'akiv. It's not ma'akiv.
While it was mishalshal up and down, it wasn't no more ma'akiv.
Yeah. Okay, so this is all according to the opinion of, as I said, Rav Rishonim, which say that the concept of being mevaker, of inspecting of a mum for 4 days, applies to the korban tamid. That the Gemara clearly says, but it also applies to the korban Pesach, even all other generations, not only in Mitzrayim. But the Rambam does not bring this concept to inspect the behema of a mum regarding korban Pesach. He only brings it by the korban tamid. He does not bring it by the korban Pesach. And the emphasis is, it never says it anywhere befedish in the Gemara. It's a Rashi that says it, and other Rishonim that say it. But the Gemara doesn't say it befedish. And the Rambam only brings this idea to inspect the korban by the tamid, not by the korban Pesach. So there's another one of the Rishonim that also clearly holds that this din to inspect it 4 days does not apply to Pesach Deiris, and that's Rabbeinu Chananel. Rabbeinu Chananel holds it only applies to Pesach Mitzrayim and not in Pesach Deiris. So according to the Rambam and Rabbeinu Chananel, there's definitely no issue. There's definitely no issue. This whole inyan of inspecting it 4 days is a din b'negei to Pesach Mitzrayim and a din b'negei to Korban Tamid. Not b'negei to the Pesach that's brought in all other generations. It's the Rambam Shitta. The Rashba says that Korban Pesach is a Korban Yachid. And because it's a Korban Yachid, it does not need to be inspected for 4 days. The din that a Korban has to be inspected for 4 days is by a Korban Tamid and by other Korbanos Tzibur, but not a Korban Yachid. Pesach, he says, is considered to be a Korban Yachid, which in itself, which is in itself a Chiddush. Because Pesach has a certain dinim that are daim with the Korban Yachid and certain dinim that are daim with the Korban Tzibur. There's a famous sikha from the Rebbe about it, Barichas and Chelik Yud Ches, where the Rebbe discusses that there's two angles to Korban Pesach. Could be Rabbi Yenis and Rabbi Yeshua, a whole sikha where the Rebbe discusses that the Korban Pesach on one hand. Well, there's psukim that it's Teichel Shabbos, and it's Baba Knufya, the Gemara says. On the other hand, it has to be eaten b'chabura. Chabura is a tzibur sort of, but each individual has to be money on it. There's a different pratim. It's Tzayir Korban Tzibur and Tzayir Korban Yachid. The Rashba says, Legabi, this din of inspecting it of a mum, it has a din of a Korban Yachid. And that does not have to be inspected for a mum. It doesn't have to be inspected for 4 days. Right. You still have to inspect it for a mum, but not for 4 days. This is the discussion based on what it says in the Rishonim. But then you have a chiddush that the Rebbe said when you get to this inyan, and when the Rebbe had there was a 30 years ago actually, I think it was between Pesach and Shavuos, when the Rabbanim Harashim of Eretz Yisrael, Rav Avraham Shapira and Rav Mordechai Eliyahu came to visit the Rebbe. So the Rebbe was discussing when you get to being Makriv Korban Pesach, and when you get to this din of Bikur Dalad Yomim, if they inspect it for 4 days. And the Rebbe then said that the shaila is something else. Even if you're going to say that the bikur of 4 days, there's a halacha that you have to inspect it for 4 days, but maybe, and it's ma'akiv, but sof, what's the whole point here? To make sure it has no mum. So therefore the Rebbe suggested maybe you could rely on Eliyahu Navi to come and tell you that this behemoth doesn't have a mum, even if you don't have 4 days. Just like the Gemara says, when you get to so many different things, Teiko, Tishbi, Taratz, Kushis, Vabayis. So maybe you could rely on Eliyahu and Navi to come and tell you whether it has a mum or not, even if you don't have 40. So even if it is Ma'akiv, you could rely on Eliyahu and Navi. So the Rebbe said then, what is it Tolian? L'chayra, there's a famous Shaila. How could the Gemara B'chlal say you rely on Eliyahu and Navi? Stachta, Klal Teira, Le B'Shamayimi. And you can't rely on any nevuah to paskin any halacha. So how are you relying on Eliyahu and Navi B'chlal for any halacha, for any din? Even after Mashiach, and even if it's, but you're relying on Eliyahu and Navi for his nevuah. He's telling it to you b'derech nevuah that the behemoth does not have a mum.
Tried and tested microscope.
What?
Eliyahu is not like a tried and tested microscope that you can trust in.
So the Rebbe said it's talui in what this din of Bikkur Dalad Yomim is. If you're going to say that sof this whole din of Bikkur Dalad Yomim is to verify a fact, it's to verify a metzius, so then you're not being mechadash halacha. The concept of Torah Leiber Shemaim is if you have a suffix in halacha, l'mashal, you have a suffix, you have a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Who should we paskin like? Should we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Shimon? You don't have a suffix about facts. You have a suffix what the din Torah is, Alpi Torah is. A suffix in din that you can't rely on Eliyahu and any nevuah to tell you what the din Alpi Torah is, because that you have to have kloli atayra Alpi seichel, Alpi kloli atayra to verify what the din is. But if you know what the din is, your suffix is what the metzius is. For that you can rely on Eliyahu and Navi. Just like Benegeh to all the din of it, the Gemara says Teiku Tishbi Taratz Kushis Va'abayis. You have a chayfetz where there's a suffix who it belongs to. And you have, you know what the halacha is. If you have a chazak, it belongs to him. If you have a edim, it belongs to him. If you have, you know exactly what the halacha is. The problem is, you're in a situation where there's no chazaka, there's no edim, there's nothing. You have no proofs whatsoever. Right? You have a kechbei, whatever, shnai moichzen, or another case, the Gemara discusses a case of monash shlishi, whatever it is, a case where you have no proof whatsoever. So now the shaila is, it's just pasha the fact. You have to be mevada the mitzvah. So for that, labdafke, true, and a chanami. So that's a share for itself. We could talk about that. But this is a famous question. When you get to Teiku, how could you rely on Eliyahu and Navi for Teiku? So one of the answers is that the Gemara is only talking about things that are negated to the Metzias. It has to be, you have to look into it. But Akapanim over here, the Shaila is, when you get to the Bikur for a Mum, so l'chayda, it's only a Inyan to verify a Metzias. But the Rebbe said Lav Dafka. The Rebbe left it as a Tzarechim. You look in the Sikha there, you'll see that the Rebbe it says there, it writes there a Dain Tzarechim, because it could be that this concept of Bikur of a Mum is a limit from a Pasuk, that it has to Dafka be a Bikur for 4 days, and there's a certain Inyan, mitzad the Chshivas of the carbon. I don't know if you want to use the words covet for the carbon, or a certain chshivas of the carbon, not just to take and grab an animal and slaughter it and sacrifice it right away, but to prepare it and to inspect it 4 days. It's a certain din b'fnei atzmai chshivas for the carbon to inspect it for 4 days. So if them help from the Eliyahu Hanavi, even once the Eliyahu Hanavi verifies that there's no mum, but you have to have the bikur 4 days according to the opinions that you had that it's ma'akiv. So then Eliyahu Hanavi won't help. So that's another completely different angle that the Rebbe says when you get to this whole Inyan here.
Which opinion says it's going to mark it? We don't have any opinion that says
As I mentioned before, Taisvis is the only opinion that says so. The Zerua himself has the Shakla V'Tarya back and forth. I believe it's, I have to look it up again now. Could be that his maskana is that it is Markiv. The Zerua. Taisvis, as I said, even in Taisvis himself, it's not 100% clear. Because, yeah, but the Zerua, in the end of his whole Shakal V'Tarya, he says, Shma Mina de Bikur Ma'akiv. So the Zerua, one of the Rishayim, does conclude that the Bikur is Ma'akiv. Yeah. Huh? Yeah, I mean, he's a Yachid that it's, Mamish says it clear. There could be some other Rishayim that you have Rayas for it, but he's the one of the Rishayim that says it clearly. Yeah. So, Mezeicha Zayin that Mashiach should come, there's still time. Come before then, right? What's tonight? Yud. It's getting very close. No, Mashiach will come and gleich that we should still have 4. You need 4. You need 4 full days. You need 24 hours of Meis La'es. 4 days. That's like a shaila. You need 4 days. The big white dafka dalid. You're asking up Kabbalah, up Nigla, up what? Yeah, the number 4, but Pashtus is Exeris HaKosov.
I'm saying because within 4 days it can...
Pashtus is Exeris HaKosov.
You watch it for 4 days?
Mistam, it's connected Yud Kevavke, Dal Daisis of Shem Havaya. Moshe says when you get to Slichas as well, that Slichas, if there's 4 days to say Slichas, then you say it for 1 week. If there's less than 4 days, you have to say it a week and a half. Because a person has to be Mevakir himself from a mum. When you say slicha, so you have to have a minimum of 4 days.
How many members are there?
It's a lot of mum. Yes, it's a whole expertise. It's a whole expertise to know how to check mum and a mulsa given a ganze meise. When you get to the Rambam discusses, when you get to a b'choyer, you have to know if it had a mum or not. A behema b'choyer is a ganze meise. It was a whole expertise. Tanoim and Amiroim lived out in the field for. Amiroim was right about Tanoim. They lived out in the field for months and months to learn the expertise, how to check a behema of a mum, to know all the details. A ganze meise.